You guys are in for a special treat. Already, Chris and I are drooling over Jenna Black's beautiful Aussie accent, but most importantly, her brand, her mission, and the empowerment that she brings to women is absolutely noteworthy. And that's why we invited her here on the Elevated Life podcast, because I've been following Jenna for years. We were just laughing, like, we've been seeing each other in the internet streets for a long, long time. So it feels so good to connect our hearts and our souls and just really bring wisdom and intuitive magic to this conversation. So I cannot wait to see what comes up. Thank you so much for being here, Jenna.
Hi, Brittany. Hi, Chris. I'm so excited. Really, yeah, all the feels. We're excited to
Doesn't she
jump in with
glow?
both.
Yeah, she really does.
She's an absolute goddess. So when
Thanks.
Chris and I were talking about bringing you on, he's like, "Who's this chick? Where's she from? What does she do?" I've already creeped her page. It's beautiful. But what we don't know is, how did you get into all this? How did you get started? Take us back to that moment of, you know what? I have a message that is obviously a mission. When was that moment in your life? Obviously, we're not born with this like clear vision of like, I'm going to do this thing. At what point in your life where you're like, this path that I thought I was supposed to take is
Mhm.
turning? So I want to start at that transitional point in your life.
Yeah. I think I was like 27 years of age and I was working in the fashion industry. I was in like a completely different industry to what I'm in now. And I thought, I started that job thinking this is where I'm going to be forever. Like I'm always going to work in the fashion industry and just kind of fell into this lifestyle, which felt so toxic and just was pulling me off my intuitive path. And I kept coming up with, well, actually, it was shown to me firstly, like through my health and through like I was burning out and I had so much anxiety. Like I couldn't even get transport to work. I was like so anxious to go to work every day and into the office. And I just felt really out of place. And that was when my intuition was like pinging me, go and find something else. There's something better for you out there. And I initially started as, which I think so many people end up kind of taking this pathway in, but I started as a health coach. So I actually, went through my health certification on the side while I was still working in my job and quickly realized that wasn't what I wanted to do, but I was going to apply it for my own health and wellness and just like really help myself get back into a good space energetically. And then as I was doing that and just applying it to myself, I started to, pick up on my old skills that I had before I went into the fashion industry. So I used to write all the time. I used to be very creative. I went to art school, so I started to like just pull back all these like gifts that I'd shoved to the side, And that really led me into a space of, what if I could start a freelance writing business and start to freelance write on the side of my job as well. So I went through this period of like over probably like a year and a half, kind of maintaining my job, but having these side hustles. And I started to build up all these side hustles. And that brought me to the point where my intuition was like, you know what? Jump and go for it. Like quit the job, go all in on this. Everyone in my life freaked out, but I just had this intuitive knowing I can do this. I can build my business. I'm getting goosebumps now thinking about it. I can build a business and I can really move out of this space that is not for me. And that just kickstarted I've been in business now for 8 years. So that was like at the very beginning of me starting. And so my initial business was very much like, freelance writing and doing some personal branding work with my friends. And I found myself just naturally supporting my friends that were in the health coaching school with me and helping them with their branding and with their messaging and their copywriting. And then I started to kind of evolve my work into the work that I do around wealth and energetics right now. So as I started my business, I was faced with all of the abundance stuff, all of the scarcity, like all of the money story. And that then again, like I'm someone that always goes first. I love to embody first and integrate before I teach anyone else. And so I really just started my journey of that. And it naturally just grew into the business that I have today. It's taken on different, energies and identities as it's grown. But it really was that moment, I think, of being so burnt out and working in an industry that felt really just so out of place with who I knew I was. My soul was literally like showing me so many signs of getting out, and I just decided to trust it and go for it. And I have not looked back. So
It,
that was
it's
the
it's
moment.
It's beautiful. It's almost like she's your story.
I know. I'm like, oh my God, I love her even more. Like, just love that you followed your intuition this whole time. And
Yeah.
it is so true. Like, what you struggle with, you end up wanting to share and teach when you get results. So I love that
Mhm.
it started with, I needed to heal my health. I want to help people heal in that capacity. And as you grew and expanded and evolved and hit your edges and your glass ceilings, that ended up being what you were there to teach. And I kept hearing this phrase come through my head is like, spirituality leads to a side hustle, because I
Mhm.
think all of our souls are trying to wake us up to the story that we chose, that we were born to, of like, oh, I think I should do this. And now we're waking up to this calling of like, how do I really want to serve? And the way that you described embodying the energy, being the leader, I think all of that sets the tone for why you are magnetic, why you have results, why you're actually making an impact in your
Mhm.
life and the lives of many other women. So I think that embodiment, the courage, the intuition, the action, the leadership, oh, you're like a freaking soup of just like success right there. Like those are the requirements that it takes.
Yeah, it's really beautiful because I found that, as we get to meet more powerful people, more powerful, especially more powerful women, there are the people who do eventually fall off. And a lot of times
Mm.
that's because they couldn't figure out how to do it for themselves. There are some
Mm.
people who are great teachers and they're able to teach people, but not always that embodiment. But when you're with a person who can do both, there's some sort of magic that almost happens. It's
Mhm.
almost like it's almost like they can foresee into the future about what you're about to battle against.
Yeah.
And like, hey, whoa, 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 whoa. I know you're going to come up against this. Let's prepare for it now. And I feel like to
Mhm.
me, that's one of the biggest benefits of having a coach or a mentor or someone in your corner who has the foresight. They're like, hey, you get your head down and you work really hard. You do what you're great at. And I'm going to start future visioning for you and we can make this collective happen. I love being around powerful women. It's one of my favorite things in the entire world. But I want to ask you this. How, as a powerful woman, how do you need support? Like
Mm.
how do you deal with things when you get overwhelmed? Like how does that show up
Yeah.
for you?
Yeah, that's such a great question because I think allowing myself to be supported was one of the wounds that I had to move through, and like really allowing myself to let people in and hold me because I am so visionary and I am so driven. And I'm constantly thinking about like, oh, that's going to come and that's going to come. And, my mind's always like going to the next level. And yet I was noticing in my business, in my life, like, I'm trying to do it all. And the moment that shifted for me was having my daughter. So I have two kids. When I have my daughter, she's 4 now. I was like, I gotta let people help me. I've got to like let my wall down and let people in. And so now what that looks like is I'm really good at like seeing my own blind spots in a way. Like I can see where I'm getting stuck, but I know, okay, I could move through this myself, but I know how much more powerful it is to go to my mentor, to go to my healer, or to let this out with my husband, and like let him in, let my team in. I have an amazing business manager that I work with, and I let her like see the insides of everything because she's like, great, this is how I can help you now create, a plan to get us like moving from here. So I think that I've let in people so much more like openly in the last few years, and that's been so healing for me. And not just from like a business like support perspective with team. I actually have such a light team. It's like me and Olivia, my business manager, and then we just have like a few contractors and project work that we do. I love to keep it like that,
You
but I
have
think
too
it's
many cooks
also,
in the
yeah.
kitchen.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I want things simple. Like to me, simplicity is like such a beautiful thing and like having spaciousness. Um, but yeah, I think it's also like allowing support in with mentors, with my healers, like with my friends, with the sisters that I've met in business. Like I think I have met some amazing, amazing women. And I think they really get it. Like Brittany, you get that. Like it's like you meet these amazing women and it's like they're in it and they get it. Um, so letting people in has been really, really healing for me. Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that, because that vulnerability piece, it always gets highlighted in business, where you where you start to go into business for yourself shines a light on all the fears, all the doubts, all the triggers. Like you said, it was one of the first things you had to deal with. Taking down the walls around the heart is exactly is like the mission I'm on. Is like, how do I
Mhm.
like bust through all the walls that all these beautiful women have built up to protect themselves as empaths, not wanting to take on other people's energy, but not knowing tools on how to manage it. So I think that you sharing that is like the foundational piece. Is if we want to ask for help, we have to be willing to receive it. If we want to ask for more money, we have to be willing to receive it. If we want to ask for more anything, even if it's something that you don't have a trigger around, your walls are up blocking that energetic out, like the energy out. So what are some of the energetic blocks that you are constantly dealing with when you're working with your clients? Like the top, 2 or 3 that you see on repeat, like when women are taking the walls down, or just anyone with a heart taking the walls down. What are those blocks that you're dealing with? Asking for help is clearly one, but what are some other ones you see?
Yeah, I mean, just this week I've had conversations that have been, that are very recurrent with my clients that I work with, in terms of like really saying what they want to say, like letting their message come through. And that again was one of my pieces. So I always notice like the threads and the common threads with me and my clients, but really allowing them to come into a space of, this is my intuitive truth. And even if my friends and family don't get it, even if they don't know what I'm speaking about, even if there's people in my community that don't resonate, I'm speaking to those that do. I'm speaking to my soul clients, my soul family. That's like a huge one, is this messaging and like letting themselves be seen in their gifts. It's a huge piece that I work with. And then in addition to that, there's the money piece that I'm constantly working with my clients around, which is really fun for me, because I get to, like look at what is the energy behind it. But I think there's a lot of this like receiving energy, like feeling worthy of receiving, feeling trust that money is coming. That's a big one too. It's like, letting down these walls so that abundance can actually flow in, so that they can come back into their own abundant channel and create from that space. And this is what I'm constantly working on with my clients. So yeah, they're the kind of top 2 realms, is that receivership with money and trust with money, and then the allowing ourselves to be seen and heard and express what wants to come through us.
Oh, it's really beautiful. And it's so important for people who want to start a business. It's important to realize that not everyone's your client. Like you don't have to make everybody happy. Everyone has to vibe with what you sell. And it's just, it's funny because like you see some people, oh, well, people aren't going to like that. You're right. Some people are not going to like that. And some people are going to freaking love it. And they're going to write it on their forehead. They're going to be so excited to hear that message over and over again. And they need it. And so many of us tone down who we are in hopes that we placate to everybody. And the second that you do that, you're everyone else. You're generic. And so there's something that differentiates you as a person, as a lover, as anything. You have to bring to the table who you are. There are enough copycats of everybody now, especially anybody with success. I mean, it's just, there's a million of us. And so you have to bring that flavor that you have to the dance and say, this is me. Let me show you what I've got. And when you do that, like you said, you become magnetic. People who are interested are very interested because they feel the truth. Like they feel the truth that comes out of and it pisses some people off, and that's totally okay. But I really want to talk about this money topic, because that is such a huge topic, and people struggle with it. I mean, just so damn much. And it's so sad because there's so many people who could be living better lives, but aren't because of the way they're stuck. Now, you have a concept that you talk about called raising your standards. And I want to dig more into that idea. How does a person say, you know what, maybe I haven't played the game that I really want to play. Maybe I've been being a little mediocre. Maybe I haven't risen. How do you begin to take that journey of seeing your standards and saying, you know what, maybe I'm meant for more? How does that start?
Yeah. Well, for me personally, and always going back to my own story first, because that's how I've moved through this, was looking at, what am I tolerating or allowing or just accepting as normal based on how I grew up, based on what my parents taught me, based on my environment, right? And the conditions around me. And so that's where I have my clients start to. That's where I have everyone start. It's, okay, what am I deeming that is just the way it is? We hear that, oh, that's just the way it is. And so people just accept, it's just this acceptance. Oh, okay. We have to come back to the remembrance that we get to choose and that we are in creation. I have been doing so much work lately around like really channeling source energy and coming into the flow of source energy as me, and moving from that space and deciding from that space. And coming back to my soul, my higher self, and what it is that I get to choose. And that's really the work. It's like initially doing this complete, like, it's almost like taking an observer perspective of how did I come to this point? What am I allowing in? Whose truths are actually playing out here? Like, is this my highest truth? That's something that I always come back to. Is this my truth? Or is this my mom's? And was that my grandmother's? And, and then we kind of go down the lineage. But I think it's really powerful to remember that we can choose and that we are creating from that space within. And from that space, then it's like, okay, I have an opportunity to elevate that standard and to really come back into my soul, my knowing, my truth. What is that? And so when I have my clients do this, I get them to really drop into this non-egoic space. So we even do a practice of like turn the ego down 0%, turn soul up 100%. There's different practices that we do to get into that, but like really allow the soul to speak and to be felt and to hear that information coming through. And, the ego will be chatty and loud and all the fear will come through, as we know. And then the soul is like this, like subtle, like, here it is. And it just kind of lands in. That's how I receive it, at least. It's just like very grounded and instant. And then it's from that space, well, what is my truth? What am I choosing here? What is the standard I want to elevate to? So for me, with money work, it's, well, what do I actually desire? And it's not from this space of like, what do I need right now? What do I want? It's what do I actually desire? What do I know is available? I also then look at, okay, where am I still tolerating the old standard, or where am I still going back to the old pattern? Okay. And then what needs to shift here? What do I need to feel to release this? What old identity do I need to? I always say I love my old identity forward. Like I love my inner child forward with me. It's like, come on, I got you. Let's go forward and let me lead you. You can relax now. So there's all these practices that we do, but I think that's some of the core work that I do is really that just the soul knowing of what we get to choose here in this life, this rich, vibrant life that we're living, the elevated life, and really coming back into, okay, if I can choose, then what would I choose? And then from that space, who am I being? And how do I operate now from that space?
Woo. Are you ready for this magic? So I just got off a tarot call, and the last card I pulled was your soul whispers love, your ego shouts fear.
Yeah.
OMG. And that was the last message I gave her, is as I see more light workers on this transitional path of leaving behind that old journey that they once thought was meant for them, and they're stepping into their authentic truth and creative expression, the biggest thing is that they overthink. They're thinking too hard and they're not just being. And so I gave her that advice, is like, turn the thoughts down and practice, find a modality of practice where you get quiet. You turn that, you tell that girl, shut the fuck up. And you go inward to finally tune into that whispering soul voice. So I'm curious, Jenna, what are some of your soul practices where you take care of yourself? What does your daily routine look like where you tune in and get quiet with your soul?
Yeah. So I work a lot with my spirit guides. I'm like constantly communing with them. But for me, I'm really big right now on, and this has been something I've been doing for the last like 2 years, and I've seen the difference between business and life before that, is really like cleaning and clearing my energy with all interactions, with all, client experiences, and being very, I call it like this intentional momentum throughout the day. So I go through these like intentional pockets in the day. So it could look like, okay, I'm going to hop onto a Zoom call. Let's, protect, ground the energy, clear any thought forms that aren't mine, clear any low frequencies that aren't mine, come back into my soul, and like set the intention. And then I'll hop off that event or that call and then do the same thing, clean and clear all energies that's not mine, and like recall my energy. So this has just been like something that I do literally so quickly now because I'm so just in the flow of it. But I do that throughout the entire day. And I find that those moments, it just helps me know, like, what am I carrying that's my truth? What's my soul's energy? And then, sending back anyone else's energy, and letting that like really clean, clear, pristine energy be felt. And I find that I hear my soul so much clearer now. Like the intuitive download is like instant. And it usually, it usually has been, but for many years I was still kind of figuring out, okay, that's soul, that's ego, and like getting to know it, especially when it's foreign or new. I have to say, like when I was a kid, I was like so intuitive. I saw spirits. I was so tapped in, and then I just shut that down, right? Because it wasn't a safe environment for me to really feel that as a child. And so I had to go on this like relearning process and remembering process. But now it's just really tapping in instantly. I think as well for me, I've started to, I have two little kids, so my morning practice looks a little bit different now. And it's kind of interesting because I initially had all this fear of like, oh, well, what about my morning practice? And I kind of had this attachment to doing these longer practices that I was so used to pre-kids. But now it's really interesting. I'm kind of applying the same intentional momentum and just doing these like pockets of the day, and like letting myself be almost like a walking practice. It's like, what if everything I do is this devotional energy? Like I make my cup of coffee and I'm like, this is a moment for me to drop in. This is a moment for me to feel, to, rather than having this like 1 hour meditation or whatever I was doing before. And that's been really interesting because I work with a lot of mums. I work with a lot of women that have like full schedules and lots going on, as we all do. Life is full. But it's really interesting because I'm kind of realizing like, oh, it's more about the continual flow of this and the embodiment throughout the day rather than like, here's my practice and that sets me up. It's actually like, how can we just be that energy more in everything? So that's what I'm playing with now. It's really fun.
Yeah, it's not just another check off the to-do list. It's living mindfully and that full embodiment that we talked about. All the practice and all the tools that we learn are to get us to this free-flowing, tapped in the present moment experience. And once you've learned how to be present and in the bliss, you just let go of the tools. You don't need them so much unless your energy gets a little clogged.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, what Jen is talking about here, what is so just massively important is that clean and clear routine, and that you don't have to make huge time devotions to anything. There's so many things that you can sneak into your day. I hear people, oh, I can't meditate, I can't do that. Like, do you sit at red lights in the car? Well, then you had an opportunity to meditate. Do you ever, just like you said, do you ever get your coffee or your tea ready? Moments to meditate. Do you do laundry? Do you wash dishes? Do you go on a walk? All of these are moments to meditate. And like you said, eventually you turn your whole life into a meditation. The whole thing is a spiritual practice. It's not just I go to Sunday for church. I see some people, I think about, my place in the world and my spiritual connection. And the whole rest of the week, I'm just a heathen. It's not like that. It's to where you start to dedicate. And it's interesting you brought up the idea of devotion, because I think that's such a powerful thing that it's almost hard to talk about, because when we think about things like yoga, we think about physical movements, we think about stretching, gymnastics, Lululemon clothes, we think about pants, we think about that. But when you get into like real deep yoga, it's like bhakti yoga, where it's devotional yoga. You turn your whole life, everything you do, the way you set a plate down when you're going to have dinner, that is part of your devotional practice. And so it's so different like that. And it adds such a quality of life. And I love what you talked about. That clean and clear thing, to me, is probably one of the best practices. And I know so many people sleep on doing something intentional like that because they forget, but it's silly. You've got to build that into a routine. And not only that, you've got to build it into a routine, especially if you're in a service-based business, when you come home to your partner or kids. Because otherwise you're bringing people come to us because they have problems. Like they've got things they want to solve, and they pay high ticket dollars to help us, come in there to fix them. And so I can't bring everything that got dumped on me during the day to Britt. I'm just going to overwhelm her. She's been doing the same. She's been doing the same thing all day too. And so she's not going to come and dump it on me. And we're just like, well, this is a big pile of shit now. You have to, these things are mentally clearing. They're energetic clearing. And once you've done it enough, like you said, it's almost instantaneous.
You build a habit. Yeah.
And it's just like, boom, I did it. And I'm fine now. It's like, I wash it off my body. Like for me, I always picture showering all the energy off of me. Like that's the way that works for me. It's quick. I'm an Aquarius. I love the water. So it's just a very easy visual for me, but it literally takes a second. Now, when I first started doing it, I had to practice it. I had to be like, what would it look like? Where would the energy be attached? Like, how does that even work?
Am I even feeling this? Like,
once you do it. So I want to ask you this. do you have any practices that you specifically do with your kids or your partner or anything like that, or friends? Do you have any things that you do where you bring someone else in also that's not just individual?
Yeah. So I do this with my kids. I mean, my daughter's 4, so she's starting to really receive this. My son's only 7 months old, so he's receiving it, but he's not communicating verbally. But what we do now is at the end of the day when they get home, I ask them to like clear and remove anyone else's energy. So just like, really taking a moment, if my daughter's been at kindergarten, it's like she's around like a bunch of kids. She's got, it's busy, right? It's fun. There's all this stuff happening. So it's like, let's release everyone else's energy. And she'll really come in now and be like, okay, okay, mommy. And she, even if she's, I still feel like she's feeling it for sure. And she's, just setting the intention and at least being present with me to do it, which is really powerful. Makes me a proud mom to have those moments with her. But I'll do that for my son. So I'll ask my guides to clear his energy and do the same thing, especially if he's been out or, I do it even if we've been home all day. It's still just like a practice. The other thing I do, which my energy healer, who I have been studying with for last couple of years and is my go-to healer that I go to, she's like, you've got to clean and clear your house, your home every day. And I do it in the morning and in the evening. And at first I was like, I don't want to, like you're saying, like, I don't want to, I don't have time for that. But it's like now I'm like, oh, I feel strange if I don't do it. So I always do that morning and evening. And I'll ask for, the energy to be cleared of all low frequencies, shared thought forms, shared emotions. I'll ask for protection around us as a family, but also our land and property here as well. So that's really powerful as well. And usually my kids are with me when I'm doing that. So they're kind of like they're in it with me the whole time, which is really fun. So they're definitely picking up on it all.
I love this conscious parenting movement that's happening. Chris and I chose not to have children, and through some past life regressions, we now understand why. But to get to see parents that are taking that journey and bringing more mindful tools immediately to just the normal everyday conversation. Now we won't feel so weird when we say, yeah, I was talking to my spirit guides, which leads me to my next question. Because I'm married to a hypnotist, I have done thousands and thousands of hours of hypnosis sessions where I go and talk to my loved ones and my spirit guides, and I've been able to meet my spirit animals through the practice of hypnosis. I'm curious, how did you get acquainted, connected? Because as children, of course, we're tapped in, but it seems like we all turn it off. And I'm hoping that with conscious parenting, the kids don't have to go through the remembering and relearning process. Yeah. But I'm curious, when did you become aware of your spirit guides? How did that connection start? And did you also think you were crazy as well?
Yeah, 100%. Definitely went through that. And now I'm like, just own it fully. And,
yeah,
it's so interesting, just as a side note for me to see when people get uncomfortable if I speak about it. Like, obviously not you guys, but, my parents, they're like, okay, they're still like super uncomfortable, but now it's more playful for me and curious. And I used to be like so afraid to say anything. Now I just find it kind of funny and interesting. But yes, I think, I was thinking about this actually recently because, like I shared before, I grew up super intuitive. Like I had spirits in our house. Now I realize, like, I don't know if all of those spirits were that friendly, and doing the work that I know now, and now knowing how to communicate now and remove them off properties and things like that and return them to the light. That's a lot of the work that I do. But when I was growing up, I definitely had like a dominant spirit guide who I now know is Archangel Michael. And that's who I've been working with for so many years. But I completely, shut that down. And probably around like age 5 or 6, I think, was when I was really like, okay, I'm feeling this. And I think I remember kind of saying to my parents, like, oh, so-and-so's in the room, or like, I'm seeing that person, or like, I'm talking to this, imaginary friend, but it's not really imaginary. It's actually a guide coming through, or maybe a spirit in the house, because we've lived in a couple of different houses. And I remember when I've tuned in since then, I remember feeling like, yeah, okay, there wasn't necessarily the best energy in some of those. Some of them were good, some of them not. But I think a lot of that kind of brought up fear for me because I didn't know how to deal with that, whereas now if my daughter was like, oh, so-and-so, if I'm seeing this or I'm feeling this, I'd know how to manage it for her so that she doesn't feel afraid, because I think I had a lot of fear. But I also grew up in a space where my parents did not encourage that, right? And still don't understand or receive that. So I've had to really go through my journey of, well, this is true for me. Like, I'm not denying this. This is true. This is true. This keeps showing up. I believe this. This feels real. And having to like re-navigate that as an adult, you know, and do a lot of inner child healing to really like look at little Jenna and where she shut that down. So now my relationship with spirit is so different. And so I don't have fear anymore. You know, we bought this house last year, and immediately in the first week of living here, I was like, okay, there is a spirit still attached to this property. And previously I would have been like, oh my goodness, you know, like I'm freaking out. You know, when I was younger, I would have been totally scared from that. And now I just went through this process with her, this ceremony. I asked my guides to let her heal and clear, and they removed her to the light. And it was just so powerful and so loving. And I remember her being like, thank you. Like, I don't want to be locked down here. I want to go. And I didn't have any fear. It was just, you know, normal. So, I forget your initial question there, but yeah, I think it's just been such a journey of like reclaiming that this is real and that I get to approach it in such a different way now.
I feel like you have a question, but I want to just keep on this conversation. How do you manage having communication with your parents that are muggles when you're a magical visionary? Because my dad was a Christian preacher, and there was a point in our adult relationship where he's like, I can't even have a real conversation with you because you're always talking about the moon and manifesting. I'm like, well, you know, it's written in your book, right? Like 50 something times, but we won't go there. So how do you navigate being, I would call you the rainbow sheep, but your last name's Black. So I think, how would you navigate being the black sheep of bringing people to the light?
Yeah. I know I'm like the black rainbow sheep. I know, I've thought about that before. It is funny. So I think I've just had to go through so many layers and so many experiences, and this is still like a work in progress, right? Of just accepting them and like loving on them regardless, and just seeing that this is their soul's path. Like, this is what they're choosing, and that's perfect, and what I'm choosing is perfect. And you know, I grew up with both of my parents are super atheist. Like, so not even like, it's so interesting because a lot of people that I talk to a similar story to you, where it's more like they're the spiritual one that's led from like a really Christian or Catholic upbringing. My parents were like so atheist and very much like shut down anything spiritual, anything faith-based. So I think that's been so interesting, is like, for me, what's really turned the page in recent years, and I would say even just the last 2 years of my relationship with my parents and being more open about this and just like speaking my truth and not holding it back, has been that I've embodied and moved through it so much. And really, like, this is the work that I do with my clients. This is my truth. This is who I am, to the point where I'm like, I can't not express this. I can't not be who I am anymore. There's just no other option. You know, I used to always kind of hide a little bit or like be under this facade in certain society groups or certain circles of friends or family, you know, and I'd still be kind of like the watered down version or the old Jenna. But now I'm like, I don't have time for that. I'm here to lead a movement. I'm here to be me. And I have seen the results of that and what is manifested in my life from that space. So I know that even if my parents don't get it or understand, I think deep down, I trust deep down they do receive me being in my light, and they do receive like seeing that and how that can maybe impact them in a positive way too. So I just always lead by the energy of I go first, and I'm just the walking embodiment of it. And if people choose to take that or not, that's up to them.
Yeah, it requires a very high level of courage, and it's just so beautiful to see you embody it so
thick skin,
effortlessly. And I mean, effortlessly, bitch. It took 30 probably years. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But like, where you're at now, just you can relax and you can change into. It used to be hard. I used to be afraid. I used to not be connected to myself, and now this is a on demand, like flowing connection, like source, I don't know, like just channel for spirit to come through. It's like really cool to witness. I got a couple questions, but one of them I keep hearing, ask her about what did she struggle with in business, where you that transition for where you opened up to just full flow, $1 million in the bank. Holy smokes, this is so effortless. This is easy. I feel like I cracked the code. What was Jenna struggling with before that? Just like, I'm open to receive and abundance and clients and all the things. Like where were you struggling?
Yeah, I mean, the exact same thing that I was sharing about my clients before, like letting myself actually say what I wanted to say and letting myself be fully open as me and speaking to the clients, like the women that I really want to work with. I think before I was like really struggling with just the full expression, like the full magnetism, because there was like this facade up, right? So it's been interesting. I think I went back because one of my clients was asking me about this. She was like, tell me about this time, like before you felt like things shifted. And I went back through my old Instagram feed and it was so interesting, just like reading, like feeling the energy of the posts and just like the energy of like even my photos and like how I held myself and my posture and just, I could just see it. I could see like this like kind of hidden Jenna, you know, like a little bit curled up. And I think I've just really like, that's been a continual thing for me to look at is like, what is the next level of being open and fully expressed for me? And so I think that when I look at that like shift into when things started to really compound and take on that life force, it was me just taking my power back and just saying, you know, it's more exhausting to not be yourself. You know, it's exhausting to not be yourself. And I think a big shift was when I had my daughter, because she really helped me see like, you know, I get to embody this for her now. Like I get to really show her what an authentic, you know, woman with integrity and heart and mission is, and how that person moves through life. And she gets to witness me. And so that my kids are really healing in that sense, for me to take on that as well. But yeah, I think it's been, you know, the struggles have definitely been that, you know, moving through the good girl energy, the people pleaser, like they were my big kind of archetypes that I was like moving through and coming out of, to reclaim my power, raise my standards, like really speak to the women that I want to speak to, create the offers I want to create. You know, let it be out there and let it be like a combination of all of my gifts rather than trying to box into, you know, the coaching industry and what's normal out there, you know? So I think I really I see myself as very innovative in the space, and I really just kept innovating from what my soul was showing me. So I think that's where things really took off in a new way.
It's amazing because do you feel like this is like trajectory for the rest of the world too? I feel like there's so many more women who are realizing that maybe the life that their mom had, or maybe the life that their grandma had, is not necessarily the life that they have to have. That like because the real power is in choice. I mean, that's out of everything that you can do, your ability to choose one thing over another is the real power. And do you find that? Because even for me, even as a guy, I'm finding more guys are starting to open up to these conversations, and more guys. It's one of my favorite DMs to get, a period, is, "Hey, I have a really powerful, badass wife or girlfriend. How do I help her? Like, she crazy. She busy all the time. We're always going places. She's always got these ideas at the weirdest times." I feel like people are starting to wake up. Do you feel like we're on that trajectory where more women and more guys are going to start filling in that role? Like, oh shit, I can be supportive. That's okay to do. It's okay to be a guy who's like, I care about you. I want to open the door. I want to support you on your big soul's mission. Like, I want to be there when you're on stage. I care about what you're doing. Let's talk about the outline. Let's talk about your speech. Let's what's going on here. Like, how do you think guys can show up? And what do you say to a female who's on that rising journey, who has risen, or who's taken those standards and brought them up, and she's now moving forward, but maybe at a faster pace than her partner or her family or her friends around her? What do you tell her? Like, how does she build the courage to just keep moving forward? And how does she interface with her partner to say, hey, listen, I got this, calm down a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I think this is such a powerful conversation, because I've been in conversation with my husband about this for years now, you know, and because he's been always there supporting me no matter what. Like, and I am so, so grateful for that, because when I quit my job and I like jumped in 8 years ago, everyone, as I said before, everyone was like, are you sure? Like, this is too risky, da, 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 da. And I just kept trusting. And I knew this is going to work out in something even better, which it has been and it continues to be. But that's because I'm choosing that, right? Like I'm focused on that. And I think that when I have shared that with my husband, he's like, but I love this part of you. Like, this is amazing. You know, it's like expansive to watch you. He's like, I've never doubted you for a second. And I think that for women who are maybe in that similar space, it's trusting, like, you've got to do it for yourself first. You know, I think that's the biggest thing is like, so often as women, we're like, okay, make sure everyone else is good, you know, make sure the family's looked after and then me. But what I have found and what has been uncomfortable to look at, but take ownership of is like, I go first and I nourish myself. And I know that then everyone else is more deeply loved and nourished from that space. And I know that my fulfillment is also my children's like fulfillment passed on and my husband, you know, and we create this ecosystem and this beautiful energy. So I think for the women that are in that space, it's like, come back to what you desire first and what you choose first, because your partner will either rise with you or they won't. But if they don't, then maybe they're not the best fit for you. And maybe you will be calling someone in who's like, this is sexy, I'm going with you, you know, like, let's go to the levels together. I think there's also a shift in like what you were sharing, Chris, around like the dynamics kind of changing, right? Like, it's been so many years of, you know, men in high positions and making money and, you know, that kind of society, how we've seen it and how we've been conditioned. And now there are so many amazing women rising into that and like surpassing that. And just this kind of energy is shifting. And I think that I'm seeing so many more conscious men, like you said, like really coming through and being excited by it rather than intimidated. I think that's the thing. They're like, oh, this is amazing. Okay. And we can shift the roles and we can play with the divine masculine, divine feminine roles and like move it around, you know, and like redefine it. So yeah, I think for the guys, it's about if that is, you know, if your partner is taking the lead and if she's creating something visionary, like where do you want to go? Like maybe using that as an example. Like that's what my husband's done. He's looked at me and he's gone, wow, okay, I can manifest stuff. Okay. And so he's like kind of started on this journey. And it's so interesting because we'll do some like money stuff together and then he'll get like a random payment. He's just like great at manifesting money. He's like, oh, this just happened. I'm like, see, you're so unattached to it. And he just kind of plays with it. So it's been really interesting for him to see me leading first with like the embodiment and the healing work I've done and like the depths that I've gone to in the last 10 years to really like reclaim who I am, and just letting him like take the path with me. But I've never come from the space of like, I need you to do this. I've just trusted that he will evolve on his own journey and his own timeline. And we've actually just happened to go deeper into it together. You know, I know some couples like part ways in that situation, but we've been like, oh, this is what we're here to do together, you know? So yeah, I think there's so much fun to like, it's like letting it be fun and letting it be exciting rather than that intimidation of things are shifting. It's like, this is exciting. This is exciting for the world.
I always say if you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. So I love you just shared that. And I'm giggling over here because we actually created a couples retreat called Evolved Couples Retreat based on having years of hosting goddess retreats where we teach them to reclaim their power and heal and tap into their intuition. They would go home to their partner and their partner's like, what the hell happened to you? I want that. Like, how do I get that? And so for years I resisted like couples retreat. I don't know, like men, are they open? Are they getting, I don't know. And actually I'm looking at the date 2 years ago to the day was our first couples retreat. And the men cried more than the women did. So I'm like, oh my gosh, it is so beautiful to see that shift in evolved couples where it's not couples in crisis, it's couples wanting to support and learn and grow and use the tools to do something different. And I'm curious, you mentioned like you brought your partner in to do some money manifestation. Is there a particular tool or practice that you find effective that you guys have done together?
There's nothing like specific coming to mind. It's more just been these conversations around like, well, what if it got to be a space of overflow for us? Like, what if we got to buy that beachfront house that we want? What if we got to donate to these amazing charities that we both care about? Like, what if we got to create this and this? And just like opening up, I think for him, it's been like opening up the conversation and the vision of what's possible, like beyond what he thought. And then back to that conversation, Chris, before about standards, like redefining, okay, what did I grow up just thinking was normal? And what do I want to redefine as my new normal? you know? So it hasn't necessarily been like a specific practice we've done. It's more just been like, let's just play with the numbers and play with the vision and let's decide that this is happening. I think that that's the biggest thing I always come back to is just decision and choice and neutrality around that. It's like, I don't need to guess whether I'm worthy of that. I don't need to keep going back to like, is this going to happen? It's already done. And then it's like, let's move forward from that space, you know?
Well,
So it's been really
definitely,
interesting.
yeah. Yeah, you nailed it. There is a specific practice and it's visioning. It's going out into the future and projecting what you do want and not what you don't want, which is called worry. So I love that you use that visioning and have those conversations. Chris and I call it walkie-talkie. We go out on a walk and we just talk about what's next? What if? My mom always called me the queen of what ifs. I'm like, but what if this happened? And what if that happened? And now I understand that's a visionary quality. I'm always thinking of like, what's the next possible outcome or could we change it? So speaking of visionary, what do you see for this year? Where do you see yourself going, creating, doing, or what's in your vision? Like what's dropped in your vision? Right?
I mean, there's always something brewing.
Of course. There's like probably anything.
Yeah, you guys get it. I'm actually working right now and I'm letting this be this kind of I'm almost like going slower than I normally would on something. Because normally when I get an idea, I'm like, boom, let's do it, you know, and like let's sell the thing. I'm developing, I can feel there's like a new body of work coming through. And I've been developing this practice around wealth energetics and around returning back to our soul state and really our like source state to be in the flow of wealth. And so I'm developing my own modality, if you will, and just really taking my time to like let it come in. It's very much up in the ethers right now, but I'm pulling in pieces. Even in the last week, I'm like, oh, that. So that's how I like visionarily work. I like put it up there and then I like let it land in. So that's developing in the background, which is going to be really exciting because I've just noticed, you know, I do a lot of business mentoring with my clients and a lot of like the wealth energetic piece, but I have always, you know, pulled on other tools and practices when it comes to, you know, money healing, wealth manifestation, like, and wealth beyond money, spiritual wealth, energetic wealth is always at the forefront of everything I do. But I never quite like developed my own sequence as such. So that's what's happening in the background, which is super exciting and just letting that kind of land in and like doing it in a way that feels really just fun and slow and letting it really come through. So I'm working on that and then just really serving my clients at a deep level this year. Like for me, I'm working with less clients right now, but deeper, you know, and like in mastermind and private. And that's been really powerful. I think I went through a season in my business where I did a lot of programs and a lot of courses and, you know, I think we often like kind of fall into that in the coaching and healing space. And that was fun. But now I'm in this season of mastery, you know, and really like pulling what is my zone of genius and going deeper with my clients. So getting to know them so deeply, working with them in longer form content, longer form programs, I should say, you know, up to a year, so that I'm just like really of service to the women that are in my space. So that feels really good. And especially having my 2 kids, it's just this season where I'm doing less, but going deeper, making bigger impact. So that feels really good.
Yeah, simplify to magnify is what I'm hearing.
It's so amazing when you do that because you can dial in so many different things. Like you said, when you spread yourself out with a bunch of courses and offerings and stuff like that, it's almost just overwhelming. And for me, I've done the same shift this year, and it's already been amazing. Just the feeling of it is amazing alone. And always when you have the good feeling, it produces really good work. And for me, I've been wanting to work with clients for longer periods of time. You know, I'm not just solving one problem, I'm not just doing one thing, but like, let's see how far you can go. Like you said, in a year, how far can you go in a year? How far can you go in like 18 months? And just, it's almost like you're unhinged. When you have someone who believes in you deeply for that kind of period and keeps you honest, keeps you on your game, like, it's just like a holy shit. I mean, just how much it's almost like we just don't see people tapping their potential enough. You know, and almost anyone that you see a biography for, or you read a book about, or things like that, they always had that one person that just crazy believed in them, even more than themselves. And they were just like, what are you talking about? You can do more than that. Like, what do you mean? And it's like that person prodding you enough produces fantastic results. I mean, just in that I prodded you enough.
You got to have somebody there cheering you on. I'm surprised you haven't asked her what are your top favorite books that you've read, whether it's spiritual or business, finance, whatever. Like, what are some of the top books? Like, you're the Aquarian. He's like reading a book every day. So what are some of your books?
I love The Untethered Soul. and the author's name is like out of my mind right now, but I love that book of just like returning back to our power as a soul and our ability to create. I love the book Essentialism. I'm not sure if you guys have read that one by Greg McKeown. Yeah, I'm really big on like simplicity, intention. I love to kind of play with like these like very spiritual books, and then I love to play with the ones where it's like, let's bring it into like this practical form and like apply this in a way where there's like structure and intention. So that's how I love to work. I also love The One Thing, which is similar to that Essentialism book in terms of like just what is the next thing I'm going to be doing. And again, I just give it my own like spiritual twist, you know. So what's the next thing that actually is intentional in my life, intentional in my business, that moves things forward? So that's been big in my world lately, just these practices of coming back to intention, simplicity, and really like that staying connected to that vision. Yeah.
That's our word for this year, is like us together in our business for Elevated Life. Our word is simplicity and simplify.
Yeah.
Like, we've done all the things. We've had a podcast and a YouTube and a membership club and a coaching and a retreats and a holy fucking shit. Like, and you want us to write a book too? Like, how do we just get back to the one? And we're talking about like what started all of this? Like, what is the thing like that we were so motivated to create a business around helping people heal their mindset? Like, what was it? And we love being live on like we just put us on the camera and we'll talk because we're not scripted. We're not reading a whatever, you know, like this is genuinely who we are, the message that we have to share. And that's what built this whole thing. We didn't even try to turn it into a business. It turned itself into a business because we were just consistent and we just kept showing up. So we've been asking that question, is like, where did we start? Where do we get distracted with building all the courses and all the things? Like, what is it that we really love to do? So I think simplify is, as much as all of us multi-passionate entrepreneurs don't want to hear that word, it is the key to focus and to grow and expand.
Yeah. And for anyone, so she casually said Untethered Soul, but I will say that as a spiritual book, that's one of the best. That's one of the best ones that exist.
Oh, good.
So if anyone's interested in reading books on spirituality that is very different than what you may go to and see in like a Sunday school or something like that, that's very top tier. I mean, that's one of like just the best. So I just want to make sure if anyone's listening, go get that book immediately. If you have not read it, please, Amazon it up. Let's go.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
So we always like to end the podcast with asking the question, what does living an elevated life mean to you?
Oh, beautiful. It means to me moving from my soul every day in intention in every moment, because I know that that's who I am. I know that that's my gift. I know that's my light, and that ripples into everything and that elevates everything from that space. So that's it. Moving from my soul, moving from my intuition.
You love her. I know you would.
I loved her more. I loved her before, but I love her so much more.
We'll have to hang out in person one day.
Literally, I'm booking the flights. Everyone, watch out.
Come to Australia. Woohoo.
I feel like I've had a past life there, because when Chris and I first met, I was like, I need to be in Australia. I need to go to New Zealand. I need to just be in that corner of the world. There's something about that accent. There's just, it feels home and so familiar. So I guess we're going to Australia.
I'm in for sure.
I'll meet you.
Oh my gosh. So any other thoughts, wisdom, visions that you feel called to share? Because this group that listens on the Elevated Life is certainly your ideal audience of, they get it. They're doing the work. They're not afraid. They're courageous. So I feel like this is the perfect platform for you to share. Like, what does the world need to hear? Like if you had a billboard on the highway, like what is that message that you need the world to know?
Yeah, I think one thing I always come back to, and I usually say this on the end of every episode of every podcast interview that I do, is to remember your power. Like, remember that you have that within you. Remember that you've always had that, and start self-sourcing, rather than looking for outside validation or looking for the answer outside of you or asking for permission. It's like really approving who you are from within and getting to know that version of you, and then deciding, this is who I am, this is what I desire, this is what I decide, and this is what I'm moving into. I just think that's been the thing that I just continually come back to, is like, your power is within you and it's always there. And you've just got to tune in and listen and trust that and action it. Like, that's the key. So that would be it. Just to remember that and come back to that.
It's like you listened or watched The Wizard of Oz when you were a kid or something. It's like
it was my favorite movie.
I literally
it was my favorite.
on that tarot call that I was just on, I told her, I said, honey, you are like Dorothy with one sparkly red shoe on and the other one just sitting over there. Like, put it on, like, own your power, reclaim, like, make that decision. I always say when a woman decides, it's done. So you really have echoed so much of what Spirit uses to speak through me about helping women. I mean, I literally just hosted a virtual retreat called Reclaim Your Goddess Power, because that is the message here, is that you have it. It's not, if you see it within us, it's just a mirror and a reflection to what you have within yourself. So Jenna, thank you for being such a bright, beautiful light in this world. This was such an elevating conversation. I cannot wait to hug you in real life and continue to vision, put our visions together, because when you have a powerful visionary and you bring them together, I mean, that's how we're going to shift this planet out of fear and into love. So thank you for doing all the work that you do.
Oh, thank you both so much. I really appreciate it. It's been such a beautiful conversation. I've loved it. So much. Thank you.
I agree. Now tell our listeners where they can come find you.
Yeah, so I'm always on Instagram. So Instagram handle is jennablack.co. And that's also my website, jennablack.co. So they can come and find me, send me a message if you listen to this. I'm, always open to hearing, what people thought and what they felt and received. So
yeah, so definitely let her know, let us know your takeaways. And until then, we'll catch you next time.
Peace.